All right, we are live on Facebook. Woohoo! How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Yeah, since we last talked, there was an entire pandemic. I had a child. I
What?
live in
What?
a bus.
There was a pandemic. Wait a minute. Wait, there was a pandemic.
You didn't notice?
Yeah, you had a child. Yeah, amazing. I saw that. I'm following you on Facebook. I'm seeing all the wonderful things that are happening to you.
Yeah. It's been pretty cool. It's funny though. When I moved to Australia, the idea was, okay, Canada, it gets pretty cold. It gets pretty rainy. I want to get over here to Australia, and it's gonna raise a family in the sun. And it has rained here now for 3 years straight.
There, go figure. No, Josh, technical difficulties. Let me see where Josh is. I don't know if we're still live, but if we are, thank you for holding on. Let's see if he's able to come back in.
That was a bit of a rude way to start. Sorry, my internet fell.
Right.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm that boring. Is like he takes off right away. What are you
So
saying?
yes, um, yeah. So the joke is, Canada, and I'm from Nova Scotia in particular, where it's raining all the time, right? And so when I was coming here, I was like, you know what? I'm going to raise a family in the sun. It's Australia. It's going to be great, and it has been raining here for the last 3 years. It's been like a super El Nino special or something where we've been getting rain the entire time. But it's okay.
Yeah,
It's been interesting to say the least.
I could imagine. Yeah, we have friends in Australia, and they said the same thing. It's been rainy, 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 rainy.
Yeah, and we never really had it for this long before. Anybody who's coming in, if you want to just shoot a hello in the comments, I find that to be a nice way to kick things off. Costa here has been running a company called Uplifted Life for what, 3 years now? 4 years?
Oh no, 12.
I'm so sorry. That was a
Yeah, no,
very
no.
okay.
No,
Well,
we've
Well, 4 years ago or 3 years ago, we went on a podcast together, and that was when your Facebook group was really blowing up,
yeah,
and you were creating viral videos almost every single day. And I remember being very inspired, even by just the few videos that I caught at the time. And there's a level of honesty, a level of integrity in your teaching that I always found like just incredibly interesting and uplifting, ironically. What have you been doing since all the pandemic stuff went down and all of the strangeness of this current world, which has changed pretty drastically over the past few years?
yeah.
Can you tell me about your process and tell me about what things have been like for you?
Yeah, I've so I don't. What about 5 years ago? I'd say 5, 6 years ago. I wouldn't when the algorithms on Facebook changed, and it was much harder to get organic views and create videos that we get a lot of traction simply because the content was good and you didn't have to pay for ads and stuff like that. Um, Before we didn't have to pay for ads, we would just make a really good video with good content from the heart, just wanted to bring value, touch people's soul. I mean, the video would get a lot of traction. And so that page, the Facebook page from Uplifted Life, I think we're close to 240,000 followers, all organic, never paid for ad space. But then the algorithms changed, and they made it much harder to gain traction. We kind of scaled back on doing those videos because it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort to make those videos, but very few people. It didn't make it to as many people as we once did. Just so happened to be at the same time, my company became, for whatever reason, I was invited in to work with a lot of companies and organizations and executives and leaders from all over the world, which is like one door seems to kind of, not shut, but closed itself just a little bit, which was the online stuff. but another door opened up, and two and three doors opened up. So in the past 5, 6 years, I've been doing 90% of the work that I do is with organizations, conscious leadership, working with executives, C-suite, people, CFOs, CEOs, and people within companies that actually want to make the world a better place, and with people that are in leadership positions that want to bring their fullest potential, which is a kind, caring, loving, compassionate, empathetic human being that is also a leader within a company. And so I've been blessed in so many ways. In the past 5 or 6 years, have really been a dream. It's hard to believe sometimes the work that I do and that I'm actually doing this. COVID was COVID was incredible. I mean, on many reasons, for many reasons. One, I couldn't believe what was happening. You and I had a few chats on this side in terms of a couple of text messages I think we exchanged on the craziness of
Yeah.
everything that was going on. I couldn't believe it, what was happening right in front of our face with the whole vaccine and mandates and this and people, the division, the fighting, the fear, the toxicity. That kind of really, really took me by surprise, because a lot of people who I looked up to and admired and thought that they were rational and grounded and just didn't remain that way during the pandemic. Professionally, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to us, because what we bring to the table was greatly recognized as being valuable with an organization. So this, when the stress level goes up, when the shit hits the fan, when there's no more direction, when anxiety kicks in, what we bring to the table is valued. It's like, oh, okay, so we need more of this. So that was a blessing in disguise for us, professionally. Personally, to be honest, 2 years, 2.5 years of spending almost every day at home was amazing. Like
Yeah.
really, really amazing. At the same time, I have aging parents, aging in-laws. I have a teenage daughter, and that was quite challenging. All the fear, like I said, um, the fear just was toxic.
Yeah, a lot of fear, a lot of division. I watched a lot of my friends flipping poles, which I thought was interesting. Like people
Mm.
that were on one side of a spectrum switched over to the other side of a spectrum, and it was kind of like a big free for all in terms of like it's like whatever I thought was true about people and about the world kind of all switched around. But that's also what happens during a meditation retreat. It also happens during ayahuasca ceremony, So I wonder if this was like en masse, big, a big ceremony for the whole world. Essentially, we were forced to be inside. We were forced to look at ourselves. And the unfortunate part, I think, is that the political world just got messier and messier, and that was all, of course, post Donald Trump doing his divisive thing, and then this new left-leaning division that seems to come all the time now as well. It's been pretty wild, hey. But I'm
Yeah.
very happy to hear that your professional work was again more valued at that time. A lot of people ended up developing online courses and moving into doing meditation, doing yoga online. It was pretty crazy actually watching so many people actually step into something they maybe didn't have the time or energy to do before, but suddenly had all the time and all the
Yeah.
energy to do.
No, my wife was giving online fitness courses. She's a fitness trainer, and at the beginning, she just started. Said, "Look, we can't meet at the center. We can't meet at the fitness club. But what do you think we do it on Zoom?" And just to get people moving, And now she has clients that are doing it. So there was a whole different way of conducting business. Let's just say that at least for us, it was great, and so it brought us together, which was nice, and back to the basics, which was fantastic. So, but
Nice.
at the same time, there was a lot of turmoil and fear and insecurities and anxieties that we had to deal with. And so I'm not saying it was rosy, but I am saying that we made the best out of it. And
And where do
yeah.
you feel like we're at as a population regarding all these things? Because it feels like again the notion of a pandemic is easing and we're moving into something else. But a lot has changed in that process. Where do you kind of see the trajectory, I guess you could say, of our civilizations right now?
Well, there's a pattern, right? It's always high entropy to low entropy. So in order for the potential of something better to be created, something has to fall apart.
Mm,
And so this is the beginning of many, many things that need to be deconstructed to be deconstructed. So I kind of see it as a continuation. I don't think we're out of it yet. I think there's more to come. There's more deconstruction coming. Um, I don't see it as a good thing nor a bad thing. I just think it's part of a process. It's part of a pattern, a universal pattern from low entropy to high entropy, for high entropy to low entropy, and basically meaning, order leads to chaos, chaos leads to order,
Like
and so on and so on.
stability and chaos kind of thing. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Like
yeah,
things are,
yeah.
and it did feel for about 2 decades that things were very stable. It was
Mhm.
interesting because it did feel like, on a political sense and in a global sense, there was this level of peace and stability that almost seemed unheard of before. And then when it kicked off again back in the other direction, I think it was quite disheartening for a lot of people. But what you're saying is those cycles are going to keep on coming, whether we like it or not. So probably better to buckle up and get into the the
I mean,
waves.
just I mean, just look at your personal life. I don't know about yours, but
Mm,
mine has always been in
yes.
cycles. It's always been, the ebb and flow, chaos. Then you have the peace that comes in and everything's running smoothly. And then you have a plot twist, and then you have to adapt. And hopefully you become better, kinder, wiser, because you've kind of faced the friction. And then, and that cycle continues, hopefully to make us better. I'm not too sure if we are in that direction now, but the potential is there. So um,
Yeah.
it's really what we make out of it.
Yeah.
Like it
Absolutely.
really is, up to us. It's how do you show up in the midst of chaos? How do you show up when life is not giving you, is not meeting your expectations? We're getting to see a lot of the things that should have been addressed many, many, many years ago, but maybe now they're going to be addressed because the dysfunction is right in our face. And
Hmm.
sometimes it has to slap you, upside the head, so you can really take notice and do something about it, and stand, stand up and do what you need to do and say what you need to do and be the change and be an example of what you would want to see in the world. So maybe this is a perfect, I mean, the perfect opportunity to do that as a
Hmm.
civilization, as a species,
Yeah.
right? So it's time to evolve. And so,
Yepper. And so what's on your table coming up? Do you have anything that you're working with, or you're doing these corporate workshops and stuff? Is that still a big part of what you're up to?
yeah, corporate workshops, working one-on-one with, leaders, like I said, people within the corporate world. You would think that my type of work or what I bring to the table wouldn't be welcome in the corporate world, but it is. I mean, that's something that I probably would want to share. Is like, um, what I'm seeing, anyways, is fantastic, because on the surface level, you still
I am
there?
here. I am here, by
Okay,
the way. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. On the surface level, there's a lot of chaos. Beneath that, there's a lot of people coming together and collaborating and doing good work and seeing the dysfunction and working on being, the antithesis of that. I mean, just really being kind, caring, compassionate human beings. There's people working together, teaming up, and so that's good news. I mean, there's a lot of good things happening. There's a lot of good people out there. I'm just blessed to be working with some amazing people, amazing, presidents of companies, like I said, leaders, just amazing human beings. They just happen to wear these hats called executives and leaders, but reality is they are human beings. They are mothers, fathers, sons, daughters. They realize that there's a better way of doing things. Sometimes they feel it inside their heart, inside their soul. The world is trying to distract them from being who they are. And sometimes they just need that support to say, no, the way that you're going about things, the way that you feel inside, about leading the way through kindness and love and compassion and empathy and being authentic, and grounded, is the way. And when you give them that support and you help them, quiet the noise, the distractions, work through their trauma, work through some of the things that are contracting them, they show up in the world completely different. And those are the change makers. I mean, we are all leaders, by the way. You don't have to be part of a corporation or to be, head of an industry to be considered a leader. We all lead by example, and so you're a dad now, and so now more than ever that the way that you show up in the world is going to have a ripple effect. It's going to have a
Oh
significant
man,
impact,
it's
right?
pretty wild, hey? In fact, I have my own patterns around being, um, like purposefully dissociating for small periods of time. In other words, like it's like, oh, everything is just too crazy. I'm going to check out of the world, even if it's just for 2 days or something like that. I used to do that pretty regularly as a part of my self-care routine, and that is
Mm.
not an option any longer. And in
No.
fact, if I do check out, because again, I've got 2 children, if I do check out for an extended period of time, it actually affects them negatively, like very
Yeah.
quickly as well, like within like 4 or 5 hours. And so it's
Yeah.
actually been really cool because there was a time just recently I almost went down into it's not a spiral, but just again a dissociation on purpose, just for a small period of time. And I realized that I couldn't, and I was like, you know what, this is actually important for me. Hey, like just
Mm.
knowing that I do have to keep on, and that I do have to make sure that I'm showing up in a very real, visceral way for my kids. It's actually been super helpful. Like I feel like I'm going through a massive change because of it.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And
and
it's
it would
okay
have
to be, and it's okay to show up vulnerable too, which
sure,
is
and I
which,
promise you, I do.
yeah, which is great, right? Which is
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yep.
No, it's been very interesting. I remember speaking of what you were talking about with the different leaders and how change is happening. I remember there being a story about this is in the 80s, I believe. The way that carpets were being manufactured is that they were fucking off portions of the rainforest. They had found different fibers in order to create carpet, and it was something that was really affecting the forest. And a lot of people were saying, like, that bastard, I can't believe he's doing this thing. And it's interesting because eventually it ended up leading to a protest. So people had gone onto this CEO's lawn and they were saying, "You are doing this to the environment. You're doing that." And at one point, he actually was like, "Oh, I've never even heard of any of this. Like, what's going on?" So he went out and he was speaking to the people, and they were like, "Yeah, well, when you do this, you're actually deforesting this area, and it's really hurting these animals." And he was like, "I had no idea.
Mhm.
That's really important. Thank you so much. What can we do to change it?" And they ended up going through this massive. I can't. I wish I knew the actual company, but ended up going through this massive overhaul, and it was based on receiving criticism vulnerably. And in the 80s, that would have been a bigger feat, I would say, than right now, because it's. I feel like the consciousness lines are more open right now than they were in the past. Things were a lot more routinized before and a little more closed down perceptually.
Mhm.
So it is it that the point of that story was just to make sure and treat everybody like a human. If
Mhm.
we treat people like a human and not like a villain and not like a savior and not like an anything and just like a human, we'll get along better. And I've
Right.
noticed a trend towards even spiritual teachers recently. The new wave of spiritual teachers are actually people that are like, oh, I'm a human being. I also have these cool insights to offer, and I also
Mhm.
am a human being. Whereas in the past, you had to kind of put on a front, right? It was like, oh no, I'm speaking this message, and therefore I must live it 100% of the time, and there's no wavering. It's like, well, what happens when you're tired and hungry?
Mhm.
Like there's the human capacity changes depending on circumstances, and yeah, I just think it's a really cool shift that even politicians, if you think about a politician, if I think of a politician as a human being that's doing their best and that perhaps has entitlement issues, but that doesn't mean Trudeau, but that doesn't mean that they're not they're not still full-fledged human beings. It changes everything, and it's interesting. Recently, I've been going to schools to talk about sexual consent and drug use and that kind of stuff, and I'm a human being, but I remember when people used to come to those back in the day, teachers, I would never have thought of them as human beings. They were this other thing. And I try very,
Mhm.
very hard in those sessions to come as a vulnerable human being and to explain the mistakes that I've made in life and the ways that I've had to learn through the very messy process of getting my ass kicked, like you spoke about earlier, instead of coming as the hero uh, that's here to show everyone else what they're supposed to do. It's been really interesting to explain from a vulnerable human perspective what is true and what is ever changing within oneself. Yeah.
Yeah, I've taken that path from the beginning, Russ. There would be no way that I would be able to do this work, or to be able to share in the way that I share, open, vulnerable, right from the beginning. I would share my ups and downs and my vulnerabilities and my triggers and how I would show up not the best version of me. And we are all in a work in process, And so, yeah, the person that's in front of you that's doing what you might judge as wrong, they're still a human being, and for some reason they've either lost their way or they're self-protecting. There's something in the back that's getting them to not see what they're doing from a macro perspective, and sometimes you just have to get in there and not yell and scream at them or judge them, and just genuinely, human to human, heart to heart, um, give them a bigger picture overview of how they're affecting, what they're, what the impact of what they're doing is. Some of them won't listen, but some of them might. You would be surprised of how reaching out and just wanting to have a conversation with someone, sharing your perspective, taking a macro perspective on things, because that person who's running that shop, or like you said with the carpet, they're feeding a family, they got mortgages to pay, who knows what they sacrificed to to be where they are, and maybe they're just hyper focused on paying the bills, paying the mortgages, whatever it is that's getting them to not see the bigger picture. um, is maybe you don't see bigger pictures when you should, and nor don't see the bigger pictures when I
Yes,
should. And so
absolutely.
how can I just judge? I can say what he's doing is dysfunctional and ineffective, but I don't want to judge the person. I don't want to come at the person. I want to give the person the opportunity to hear, to educate themselves. And if they are, now we have something going. No one is going to listen to you if you come at them full throttle with the finger blaming and judgment. They're just going to coil up and contract. So the best way to get to people and to have them listen and to see things from a different perspective is, again, once from respect and kindness and gentleness and love and compassion. And
The word that would encompass that, I believe, is call in, to call somebody in.
Mhm.
That's different than a call out, right? A call out
Right.
is where you're like, hey, like this guy's a piece of shit, like fuck that guy. A call in is like, hey, mate, when you're looking at what you're doing here, do you feel like this is the way?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Well said.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, there's a massive difference in treating people like humans while speaking to them, and being able to also have I don't think faith is the right word in a blind sense, but the faith that people do generally want to grow. People do generally want to do what is right. Like I think that there's truth to that, and greed absolutely can obscure that, as can as you said, hyperfocus, and there's many other factors. But I think that if we just generally feel that people are in the business of evolving, then it's a much nicer perspective to be taking, rather than the demonization. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Our friend Deanna Lynn just came in to say exactly regarding these subjects. My mama's here, just saying hello to myself and Ruth. And Ruth's here. How you doing, darling? Nice to see. Nice to see that there's some people here kicking around. If anyone has anything they want to ask Kosta, please feel free to post them in the comments, and we'll read them out loud. I've got this cool little program now that I can do this so that we can see
Hey,
the
cool.
comments come up. Yeah, it's pretty excellent actually.
There you
I
go.
ended up I'm using this program called StreamYard, and I was a Zoom person for a long time, but I actually realized that Zoom was more the easy route. It was just the thing that I had and the thing that everyone had, and I'm starting to poke around. There's great developments in technology for this kind of stuff
Mm,
right now.
I'll
Yeah,
take a
which is
look.
awesome.
What
Yeah, which
got
is
you to
awesome.
what got you to go to Australia?
I met my wife. So I
Oh,
was here on a trip, and that would have been, God, it wouldn't have been long after we did our podcast. I went to Australia for a trip, and I met my wife, and I ended up falling in love and coming back to Canada to work for 4 months. And when I came back, we were sensing into this notion of a spirit of a boy that wanted to come through.
it's
And
amazing.
I felt, I telling you right now, man, it was not on my radar. I was not a person who I've never had that yearning. Like I wasn't like I want to make more of me's. I've always been like, that sounds a little complicated. I'd rather not. But
Mm,
when I was there and my wife, my not wife at the time, but this beautiful woman, and the spirit of this kid was around, I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm actually just gonna walk down the path right now. And I just, of course, like you were talking about the cycles, I was in a space before that where I was questioning who I was and where I was going. And if I had come at it with the confidence that I often had, that I'm never going to have kids and I'm doing this over here and I'm going to go do this over here, I wouldn't have even been open to do so. But just the right life circumstances happened in order that I was in a moment of revision. My sensitivity was higher, so I could sense this other pathway and this other thing coming up. And when I went back to Canada, Lily sent me a message just saying that, hey, like I think this boy's called Jupiter. I don't know why, but I think he's called Jupiter. And I was like, okay, well I trust your intuition. Well, you wouldn't just say that for no fucking reason. Like, let's do it. And came back to Australia, and we got pregnant the very first day I was here.
that's
so
amazing.
so it feels like a bit of a meant to be type thing.
That's fantastic. That's cool.
Yeah, and we
Cool.
live in a bus now as well. I don't know if you saw that update, but just very quickly, this is our home right here.
That is cool. There you
Yeah,
go.
And we're doing
And
it
so,
full time as well. It's not a holiday situation where we're living in the bus full time, and because we've got two young kids, we the goal is to always stay at playgrounds. So there's a playground in the background, and every time we wake up, the kids get super excited. They're like, "We're at a park! We're at a park! Like, we're at a park! Let's do this!" So every day is a very kid-oriented adventure right now, which is great.
that's fantastic. And good for you. That's
Yeah.
that's
Our
a
friend Lynn Carriage came up to say, my old nan used to say, we need to treat others the way we want to be treated ourselves. And she had the best sayings of wisdom. Yeah, that's definitely one of those hot ones, right? And to take that one step further, actually, because that is the Christian notion that we should treat people as we would want to be treated. That's a pretty solid. That's much better than not that. But actually, there was an upgrade on that saying, and it said treat people the way that they need to be treated. Because
mm,
what you do is if you communicate with people and you start to ask them what their needs are, they can actually, if we're sensitive enough within ourselves to know what those needs are, being able to ask people what do you need and have them communicate that is probably one of the most powerful things in the world. So yes, I do agree, Lynn, treat them as we want to be treated. Also, we have to be careful not to project as well, because the way I want to be treated might not be the way another person wants to be treated. Obviously, probably with love and kindness, though, and that would be the point of
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think if you get, I mean, that's one of those principles that we share is treat someone the way that you would want to be treated, and just go down to those basics. Would you want to be disrespected? No, so don't disrespect someone else.
Yeah.
Would you want to be valued? Then yes, so then value someone else. Recognize, yeah. Seen, yeah. Cared for, right. So the way that you would want to be handled, well, treat people the same way. And that's gonna go a long way for creating a company culture, right? And
Hmm.
we try and find really fancy ways of creating culture, but just go back down to those human basics, basic
Yeah, and if
needs, right?
well, that's the thing is if we're going to work with maybe the hierarchy of needs or whatever, it's like until a person is feeling comfortable and safe, they can't
Safe, yeah,
really open any further. Like
exactly.
that's
Yep.
and imagine how many people in this world, and maybe even how many leaders that ended up becoming leaders didn't have that original safety, and therefore that trauma. Gabor Mate, I'm not sure if you have been watching his recent media storm. Do you know him? If I say the name,
Yeah, I think he's from BC, right?
yeah, he is,
I think he's a
and
Canadian guy. Yeah,
he's been
he's a trauma
absolutely
tra-
just
trauma addiction specialist or something like that.
yeah, he went on. He did a podcast recently, and the very first thing he said was, "I was helping the Native American people run mushroom ceremonies in BC, which is, I think, a pretty brave way to open up a dialogue on a podcast. But the even braver sense is that what he said was, when I started to do the ceremony, they kicked me out." Because they said that his energy was too dark and heavy, and that he couldn't be around people while they were doing the thing. And so they and then pulled him aside, a week later, and put him through a shamanic process in order to clear himself. But I just thought that was really cool. Imagine a leader coming on to say, "I got kicked out of my own ceremony because my energies weren't on."
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, talk about being vulnerable, right? He's
Yeah.
a trauma specialist, addiction specialist. Like he gets kicked out. That's pretty.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, and that's what I
That's
mean is
very
I'm
cool.
just watching this new wave of people be truly honest in that way. And what he kept saying was he kept saying, to some extent I was trying to trick them, saying, "No, I'm fine," and they were saying, "Nah, like we can see through you." And the point of that was just to remember that a lot of the processes that we have in our cultures are also lacking in that deeper mystical thing, because Gabor Mate is a person who is very much in the um, what do you call it, the very much the Western psychology, right? And that's
Mhm.
great, but there's a cap is what he's saying. And then actually when he was challenged on that, he realized his own cap very quickly, which I thought was really, yeah, just very, very cool. I
Very
can't remember
cool.
why I brought that up though. I brought it up for a specific reason, but lost it. It's all right.
I mean, do we see a lot of people? I think maybe that's where you were going. I'm not sure, but people that tend to move up to leadership. I also maybe this is what I've been seeing. So people that tend to move up to leadership positions, or even entrepreneurship, or um, uh, you know um, positions of impact and influence, are usually highly insecure people to begin with. They've had some sort of trauma in their past, and the way of managing their trauma, or protecting themselves is to work really hard, rise to the top, be in a position of power and influence, or control. And this is what we're seeing: a lot of traumatized individuals in leadership positions. And so when you understand that some of their behaviors and some of their choices and actions that they're taking are coming from that traumatized little boy or girl, that's in there, you have a different level of compassion. You're like, okay, there's something going on there. If you can dig below the, just the surface and go deeper, you will see someone who's been wounded there in some way, shape, or form. That the way that they're behaving and their choices, their life choices, are coming from that self-protecting mechanism. And
Yeah,
that's
that's
very,
exactly what I was trying to say. Was that, yeah, it's important to recognize that it's traumatized people leading traumatized people, and just remembering that that's the case, you know.
yeah,
But again, it's easy in that moment to be like, yeah, fuck those traumatized people, but that's not going to help, you know. Like,
yeah,
that's not what people who are traumatized need.
no, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
but again, hopefully we are looking to greener pastures in the future. But like you just said, it's probably not coming right away. It's important to brace and be prepared for division and confusion and all those things right now, and probably getting comfortable with that process and being a solid in oneself, regardless of that process, is one of the best things that we can do.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Don't get too dragged into the chaos. I think what's important is to recognize what's going on, see the
Well,
dysfunction, but don't get dragged into it.
one
And
of
if you
one of the
can, sorry, but if
no.
you're in a position to do something to help, to bring flow where there's friction, then do so. But harping about it and letting yourself get contracted over it, get aggressive, um, become toxic inside of you, hate bubbling up, that's not the right way to go about things. You're just making the
Mhm.
process more difficult. You're just
Well,
extending that
what
process.
one video that you made back in the day that still touches me to this day, and I only watched it a few years ago still, but it still touches me to this day. It was just about um, building the new world that we're looking towards, and how easy it is to get distracted on the crumbling bridge. But to be, you didn't say this, but to be distracted on a crumbling bridge means you're probably going to fall in the water because the bridge is crumbling. So get the fuck over
Mm.
to the other side and start building, you know? Like,
Yeah, no, exactly.
yeah.
That bridge is going to collapse by its own. And yes, there's a lot of suffering taking place there. If you can do something about the suffering, then do so. But to remain focused on the crumbling bridge and get angry because the bridge is crumbling and panicked and frozen and dysfunctional yourself is not going. It's not part of the solution. Part of the solution
Mhm.
is building that new bridge, becoming an example of the world that you want to live in, and truly embodying it. Just don't parrot it. Just don't go. I mean, I think we did a video on something like that, where it's like you can parrot these spiritual teachings and quotes and books that you've read, but are you really living that life? Like, are you holding yourself accountable to showing up in the world in the best way possible? And when you don't, forgive yourself, but start again. We're all human, but people ask me, well, what's I want to find my purpose. Well, your purpose is to become an expression of love. Figure out what's going inside of you that's preventing you from being light and open and playful and loving and caring, and the way that you would want to feel sovereign. Figure out what's going on inside of you. Reconnect with something deeper. That's your primary purpose. Now, if you can you know move towards that version of you, no matter what you do in the world, no matter what you do, your state of being will be different. So you bake cookies, those cookies are going to taste different. You're going to deliver them with love and compassion inside your heart. Your energy is going to be different. So your primary purpose is to work on yourself, to figure out what's going on inside of you that's contracting you, and to work on yourself. We tend to be focused externally. I don't feel good. Let me fix the world out there. The world's not matching my expectation. I'm angry. But instead of externalizing, my journey has been, okay, I can't control the world out there, and if I try and do that, it's going to be a losing game. What
Mhm.
inside of me is getting contracted here? How can I create flow inside? Is the story that I'm telling about the situation accurate, or is just my story? Or is there a possible other story to tell here? Create that space where we're not so reactive, stimulus,
Yeah.
reaction. And I think if you, I don't know, again, I'll speak for myself, that has really been a game changer, to take responsibility. If the world sucks, If the world is a nasty place, well, then bring kindness, bring compassion. If the world is full of greed, then become an uplifter, become a giver. If you're going to create a business, find ways of bringing value into the world rather than extracting money from your clients or the world. Figure out how you can be of value, of true service. The money will come. Whatever you need will come. Find ways of bringing flow into the life of your client or the people that work with you. Be a giver and watch what happens. So I think we need
love that.
more of that these days, is that we come at the world from the limbic brain, and it's not our fault. We're programmed to survive. But unless we're able to become self-aware and overcome that, work with that, create new patterns, where we feel safe and we can create that internal emotional regulation, then we can show up in the world differently. We can show up as someone who's genuinely here to serve, not to serve because there's a contractual agreement that if I give, I will get something back.
Mm-hmm.
Just give.
And then you're saying, yeah, when you do that, the pieces will fall together. It won't
Yeah,
be.
I mean, who doesn't want to hang around with someone that is genuinely kind, caring, value oriented, shares from the heart, wants to make the lives of others better. Let's say you are leading a division in some sort of organization, or you run your own company. Wouldn't you get more out of your team, not by manipulating them, but actually showing up and giving them more of yourself, more love, more kindness, more find ways to uplift them? they
Yeah,
they're
it's
going to be they're going to become your extended family. They're not just your employees, they are your
well,
family.
actually, we had a comment here that kind of talks to the opposite of that. I'd love for you to talk about this part. Just as corporate synergy has primarily led, as you said, by trauma response. What people need to learn is how to continue to be able to work in that environment while remaining strong. Being forced to be in that environment to pay bills is too widely accepted. So, what would you say to the people? And it's funny. I'm tasting this a little bit myself now too,
Mhm.
because now I've got kids, right?
Yeah,
Before I wouldn't really care if I didn't eat for a day before, because it would be I feel like it's fine. I'd figure
yeah,
something out. But
yeah.
it does feel like, and I haven't got into a Monday to Friday type situation, but there are a lot of people that are, and it does feel necessary. And there's a lot of employers that are abusive
Mhm.
practices towards their employees. What about people that are stuck in those cycles? How would you recommend they get out?
Well, I think one, what the person was mentioning is to become more resilient and not take things personally. I think the resiliency is a good thing to develop, to kind of be able to not personalize things and to be able to create that internal flow when there is external friction. Um, but you can make your employer better by, especially these days, so many employers are looking for employees, and I hate those words, but let's say companies are looking for people, and people are now in a position to ask more from their employers, where if you want to attract in high quality human beings, you have to become a high quality organization. If you want authentic people, you better become an authentic workplace. And so
Good point.
they are waking up to that. So now more than ever, because there's a scarcity of people out there in terms to do the jobs, now more than ever, the employee is in a position to say, you know what, the way that I'm being treated here is disrespectful. And we don't say that, and we don't kind of call out things when they need to be called out, because of fear of losing my job. I got to pay my rent, I got to pay my mortgage, I got to feed the kid, feed the kids. And I totally understand that, and that's where some resilience might come in, and you have to kind of swallow it just a little bit. But sooner or later, that one person that's being abused in that job or doesn't feel like they're being respected needs to muster up the courage to either say something or to build the confidence to go somewhere else where they will be respected. So we always have a choice. You might not have a choice now, but you might say to yourself, for the time being, here I am, and I have to tough it out for the next 6 months. How can I develop myself where I could be of value to another company? Where if I were to go to company B and not stay in company A, what would make me attractive to company B? Who do I need to become? What skills do I need to go polish on? And so work on
And I
yourself. and then just
I think you also just said that having good negotiation skills might be good in this time too, because there is such a lack of work in the workforce. It's true, we're showing up to people that actually do need us, rather
yeah.
than it being the old way was, oh, we don't need you, well, you're replaceable, you know, like we'll get
Hmm.
someone else. But yeah, in this time of turmoil, there has been what was it called, the Great Resignation.
Yeah,
Is going to then force some companies probably out, and other companies to rise up to that challenge,
I
and
see
new
that
companies to be born.
I
Yeah.
see that every single day. I do a lot of the hiring in some of the companies that we work with, and they're really looking out for amazing human beings. And they will overpay someone that not just has the skills but comes with the whole package, that high integrity human being. They're going to go out and get them. So companies are waking up. It's not the world that it used to be. Things are changing. So now more than ever, it's not about negotiation. It's about really being of value. If you work for a company,
Mm.
figure out how to be of value to that company. Now, if that company isn't there to exploit people, then maybe it's time to go look somewhere else. And right now, you might be stuck. So you kind of say, okay, I need to become a little bit more resilient, but work on yourself. Work on a plan to get yourself out of there. If you can't change the company, then you need to change yourself to build the confidence and the skill sets to go work for somewhere else, or to go work somewhere else, or to work for yourself. Um, but there's always something to do. But to
I
go
think
back
that's
to
a
you
I
know
think
to
that's a
go
very
back. Yeah,
complete
sorry.
answer. I think it's a very complete answer, Costa. Thank you. Because yes, as Deanna said, we need to remain strong and resilient, but also it could just be that in your own self work, you might end up popping off into something else anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And does that answer your question properly, Deanna? And yeah, so yeah, that would be an absolute thing. And what about, here's a question for you, man. This is something that I'm working with, is I do find, having family, that uh, I end up in triggered states a little bit more than I used to, just because there is so much, like, again, survival suddenly is on the line, and closeness with a lot of people for a long period of time, whereas I was more on a solo path before.
Mhm.
How do you deal with the everyday life, the habitual, silly kind of triggers that can come up in the family situation?
Gracefully. Like, I mean, they're going to come. You're going to have good days and you're going to have not so good days. And it's to be gentle with yourself. It's to hold the intention to be the best version of you. To hold the intention to say, what would be the best version of me for my children, for my spouse? Who do I want to be more often than not? And to hold that intention, and to wake up. I mean, I kind of maybe I've shared this, but there's a little mantra that I start my day off with that says, "May I respond with lightness no matter what comes my way today." I've had that mantra for close to 10 years now. Every day I'm going to wake up, one of the first things that's going to go across my mind is going to be, may I respond with lightness no matter what comes my way today, because who knows what's going to come my way today. And so just having that in the background to understand that the best way to respond to life is be open, kind, gentle, caring, peaceful, in flow, bring flow to wherever and whenever you can. In the moments that you can't, just once you're in it, you're in it. Like, that, right? Once you've been triggered, it's too late. But if you can stand back and just take that in, take responsibility for the way that you responded, recognize that it's not the externals that are getting you to respond this way, but it's the story that you created. And then
Absolutely.
whenever you I mean, I did this with Christina. My daughter's 20 now, but she was tiny, 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 and I would apologize if ever I would not be the best version of me. I would say,
Yes, yes.
sorry, it's not you, it's me. Like, I'm so sorry. She would be, I don't even think she would understand me. She would just look at me sometimes, and I would be just, I'm sorry, and I would hug her, and like, till this day,
This is
you
what I
know
do as well.
yeah, it's
This is
just
what I
kind of
do
say,
as well every time. Yeah.
daddy bad, like, I'm so sorry, that's me, I over exaggerated, daddy will be better. And not to make that an excuse, but just to make sure that you're intentional in the way that you're showing up.
And
um,
that accountability is something that I know that most of us craved from our family, from our parents, from our
Yeah.
teachers,
Right.
from the people in our doctors, from anybody. That was something that was craving. So I have taken a very firm stance inside myself that when I do make a mistake, to fully own it and
Yeah.
describe what the mistake was and how it could have impacted as well. So it sounds very similar. There's a because yeah, I just know that it was the things that weren't resolved and weren't talked about that later turned into these big healings that had to happen. I was like, fuck, I don't want anyone to have to go through that in
Yeah.
that way. Like I'd rather I've thought about that because yeah, there's times where I've gotten triggered around my daughter. And I just hope that in later in life, if she is like, Dad, like that really upset me, I'd be like, oh, I completely understand why that would be, and I love you. Like
Yeah.
that's my full hope is to now do that work, but also to remember in the future that when those processes come up, to really be there for those processes and take ownership of how it all
Yeah.
came to be.
Yeah. I don't know, because you're allowed to be angry. And so, the emotions that you're feeling from whatever trigger, okay, those emotions are being human, but sometimes they're dysfunctional. They're not functional. They show up at the wrong time. So if you're able to be accountable for that and say, you know what, so my bad, I'm sorry, not because I was angry, because anger is not a bad thing. I'm sorry that anger showed up in a bad time. And you teach your kids when is it okay to be angry? When is it okay to set a boundary? When is it okay to be sad? When is it okay to, and so you teach them about, what they're feeling is okay, but there's a time and space for everything. And daddy just was angry for no reason at all. And what I found is you turn it into a joke. You kind of make it silly, especially, the younger the kids are, the more that they can laugh at you, the better.
I
And
love
it's not
that.
a
I love that.
it's not a disrespectful laugh. It's just like we're all human, man. So it's like, let's be easy. Daddy's no better than anybody else, and daddy screws up, and daddy's a clown, and daddy misses it sometimes, and you can laugh at me, it's okay. And so I would turn my little shit fit into a comedy skit, and my daughter would laugh, and she would mimic, what I did. There's one episode where, and she'll tell you, I slammed the shower door because I was so mad, but the shower was running with hot water, and the door went in and it wouldn't come out. Until this day, she still loved, she still laughs at me. Oh, daddy broke the shower door, and there was, steam all over the place, and my wife was mad at me. But I turned that moment in time where I lost it, and I just made myself turn into a clown. And so she laughed at me, I laughed at myself, and I think that's amazing. That's good therapy. And so those are my little tips and tricks. It's like,
I love that. I love that. That sounds absolutely amazing. I keep on going, Daddy,
yeah,
and Jupiter, my youngest son, he's so far from cognition on these things that it wouldn't make any sense. But he always goes, Dad. Like it's like, yeah, we're
yeah, exactly. You just turn it into a joke, and because you're intentional in making it better. So you're like, you know what, this was a bad moment. We don't have to be so hard on ourselves. We don't have to dramatize it. Don't charge it. The more you charge it, the more you make it into a big deal. Then it becomes a big deal. But if you are vigilant and aware, and you learn from what just happened, then you can turn it into a joke. And
I
so
love that, man. That's the
the
best possible answer to that question, man. Thank you so much. And I mean, sorry, I'm a bit biased because those are the things that I do already. So,
me
that was
too.
the best answer possible. That was amazing, man.
He gets it. This Costa guy really, really gets
Yeah,
it.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Exactly. No,
yeah,
but for real, that is the best way. And again, for anybody who's watching right now, can you think of times where you had parents or teachers or even friends make those kind of mistakes and then not own them, and the feeling that that leaves you with if someone doesn't own it is so different, right? That if there's no ownership, you
yeah,
feel like almost the feeling is, fuck, he's probably going to do that again, and I'm going to be hurt by it, rather than the feeling is maybe it will happen again, but as long as we laugh through it and as long as we can figure out a way that is as respectful as possible through those
mhm,
types of things, then there's a bit of a faith in each other through that process too,
exactly.
right?
And look at the resentment in the past 2 years over the whole COVID stuff. You know, there were so many mistakes that were done. Why are so few people saying, "My bad, bad call. We could have handled that differently"?
I
Except they would
know.
double down on
I
their
know.
position and their insanity, even though it was just, come on, are we all looking at the same situation here? It's being mishandled. This makes absolutely no sense. There's no scientific backing here. There's just so much of what was going on was not making sense. Where were the people coming out saying, you know what, like, we're human, we screwed up, we were in fear and panic mode, we we did the best that we can, we did a lot of things wrong, so much unnecessary struggling, we caused division when we shouldn't have, and so, but everybody just shuts their mouth. And that's
Have
why
you
that's why there's so much anger and division and resentment and toxicity around the way that, this whole COVID thing. Because if from the beginning they would have just been, hey, we don't know what we're doing, like, we really don't know what we're doing, so we're going to take it step by step, we're going to do our best, we're going to make some mistakes, we're going to make some good calls, no matter what your position was, anti-vax, I don't like that, pro-vax, taking the vax, masking, not masking, nobody really knew. We were just going about it, and everybody has their own theory here. But where were the people who, take some accountability? You're in a leadership position. You made some bad judgments calls. Just stand up and say, I'm sorry, my bad. We could have handled this so much better. We caused so
imagine
much
the
damage.
imagine the collective release that would actually cause too.
No,
Like imagine collectively. And in fact, it's funny, I'm not vaccinated, and I remember a time when I was standing in a kitchen with a friend. This is very early on in the whole thing, and I had gotten COVID, and it was fucking terrible, man. Like a lot of times when people don't take the vaccine, they're like, yeah, it's just a small flu anyway. It's like, it's not. It was a very different type of virus, and that's what made it so unique. And I remember standing and talking to a friend, and I was like, just had COVID, and I was like, man, sometimes I wonder, maybe I should have taken that vaccine. And he said, sometimes I wonder, maybe I shouldn't. And I thought, this is humanity right here.
yeah,
This is two
exactly.
people who are unsure, and we're doing their best. I'm doing my best, and he's doing his best. And in that, we chose different roads, but we both had that same feeling of like, maybe it was right and maybe it wasn't. And I just remember in that moment, I was like, fuck, I just wish, this is years ago now, but I just wish that that was the general vibe that was happening around all these issues. Because if we could just say, yeah, like you said, and if there was just even a slight apology of accountability for any of those things, it would just go so far for me anyway. I'm great. If someone's accountable, I'm always like, great, like, okay, come on, because I know myself. I know that I make mistakes. I know that
Yeah.
I would give the
I mean,
same grace to other people that I would give to myself,
yeah,
right?
just come out and say, what was going on. One of the things that I really had a, issue with, where it's, they beat the story, the narrative down, that if you get vaccinated, you're going to stop the spread. You're going to stop the spread. And even now, some of the, the news little info stuff that they put out there is like, take the vaccine, stop the spread. And it's like, they knew this from the beginning, that it wasn't going to stop this. I mean, not the beginning, but they knew that it wasn't going to stop the spread. And so you ask a few of them, and they said, well, we kind of knew it, but by using that card, we pushed more people to get vaccinated. And so, because we truly believed that the vaccine was the way it was going to save lives, and so we needed as many people as possible. So it was a white lie to get as many people vaccinated as possible, because we would hit that emotional string of, saving grandpa, saving grandma, reducing the spread. But after the fact, can't you come out and say, hey, by the way, we knew from the beginning, that it wasn't going to stop the spread, but we pushed that agenda anyways because we thought this was the best way to go. I'm not saying that I would turn and say, oh, you're forgiven, but I would rather have someone come up and say, we
I'd
knew
be
it, but
pretty close. I'd be
I'd
pretty
be
close
like,
to just saying you're forgiven, man, just because at least, again, there'd be some sort of ownership. The other thing is, if there's been a lot of things recently that this absolutely was a created virus, it was created in a lab of some kind. I think whoever created the virus should probably take some accountability as well, or whatever organization created the virus. I think it would be important, even if the truth is we did not mean for this thing to get released. Like most likely that's the case. I don't think that anyone was trying to do that. They were probably developing something, and then in the development phase, whoops, something slipped. But how important or how powerful would it be to just say, I'm sorry for that? Like and we've created all these new laws and rules to make sure this doesn't happen again. Like that would go such a long way for me personally. But as
yeah,
long as there's this, we don't know, we'll just leave it alone. They're just gonna walk
yeah,
away. Come
no,
on, guys, that was.
exactly, or to totally omit that there were vaccine injured people.
Yeah.
How many doctors knew that there were actually people that were,
I,
injured by the vaccine, but
I've
they were
yeah.
just, no, this never happens. It's safe and effective, safe and effective. Nobody gets injured. Those are just, but what are you doing? By doing some, yeah,
It's gaslighting,
exactly, yeah,
right? Because
exactly.
I've got quite a few friends that had injuries. One friend actually had never grew up in a very hippie household, and so had never really had any of the things. And when he had it, he actually fell down. He collapsed on the floor and passed out. And now, of course, there's also needles. There's fears of needles. There's puncturing skin. There's all kinds of reasons that these things can happen too. But I think, yeah, if people were just more honest, Russell Brand talks about that an awful lot too, because he made a mistake on one of his things recently, and so he went and he owned it on his podcast. He was like, "Oh,
Mhm.
I made a mistake. I said this false information. Wouldn't
Yeah,
it be nice if anyone else did this? Like if anybody else in this whole world just did this,
yeah.
how easy would that be? It would make life a lot easier." Yeah.
Exactly. People would trust each other more, and they would. So yeah, it was a great learning opportunity. Hopefully, things get, we learn from this and become better. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Well, look, Costa, we're going to wrap up here in a second. We've just got 4 minutes until the hour is done. Is there
Yep.
anything you wanted to promote? We've got your website. In fact, I'll type it in right now. It's just upliftedlife.com, correct?
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. So I'm just going to get that up
Um,
here. I'm going to post in the comments, upliftedlife.com. And there's also a Facebook page that is like absolutely raucous. So I'm going to give a link to that as well. Uplifted Life.
yeah. No, in terms of promoting something, no, really, there's nothing to promote. Just,
Great.
I just be kind, be caring, be playful, be easy, be respectful. I think we have to get back to those basics. Like I really, really believe that it's time to make them sexy again, right? Just go back to being, being a good human being, as cheesy as that sounds. Treat other people the way that you would want to be treated. Clean up what's going on inside of you so you can show up the best, way possible. When we talk about becoming, reaching your fullest potential, I always say, like, okay, so what is your fullest potential? To make a bank full of money, to have plaques on the wall, to own 13 cars? No, your fullest potential is to be kind, peaceful, caring, giving, genuine, authentic, in alignment with your heart and your soul. And I don't know, just take in, the blessings that you have, be grateful, give more than you take, leave the world a better place than you found it. And that's the only thing I have to promote is, just show up the best version of you, and more often than not, you will probably
I
live a good
love that. I
a
love that.
good
I
life.
love that because when people do say their fullest potential, it almost always is materialistic, right? Like that's the
Yeah,
most common thing.
I
Yeah,
never got
yeah.
that. It's like, oh, my fullest potential. So my fullest potential is to have what? Like to have something? No, it's like to be something. And if I'm going to choose to be something, what am I going to be? Like one of the hats that I wear? No, I'm a human being. So how do I want to be? I want to evolve into something. And what do I value in the world? Like what turns me on? Well, good people turn me on. Goodness turns me on. Kindness turns me on. Gentleness turns me on. And so someone, that has the ability to listen, to be present, to be like, you feel them when you're with them. It's not superficial. There's a connection there. I mean, that's your fullest potential, to show up that way. We call those people uplifters. That you walk into the world intentionally, creating environments or being a source for where the other people that are around you are going to be uplifted. If you're going to produce a product or a service, this is what you want, from the users that are going to use that, to be somehow be uplifted because they're eating your sandwich or using your program or something like that. So just be be that type of
Fantastic,
person, and it's enough.
fantastic message for the world, man. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, man.
Looking forward to connecting again soon, and good luck at everything you do, my friend.
So the next time we connect, you're going to be in another country with two more children.
Maybe so. We'll
There
see.
you go.
It was a very quick and intense 4 years, man. I'll tell you that right now, or 3 years, or whatever it was. Yeah, yeah. It
There
was
you go.
really. I'm pretty sure
Enjoy
it
it.
was. Thank you. Thank you very
Enjoy, because
much.
the days go by. I mean, all I know, I can't believe. Look, I'm turning 53. I can't believe it, and I have a 20-year-old daughter. I can't believe it. Like I don't know where those years went, and so cherish every moment, and even the contracted. days that seem like, oh my God, this, it's unbearable, and the things that are coming at you fast and furious, even those, welcome them in. I know it sounds cheesy, but you will look back and you will say those opportunities, those situations made me better. At least I had the potential embedded within them to make you better. So you'll be grateful for those as well. So take it all in, man. Your kids are
I'm
going to grow up
really,
fast, and
yeah, I'm accepting everything you're saying into my heart, and I'm seeing that already. It's going so fast. Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing. So enjoy, really.
Thank you very much, Costa,
Right, bro.
and thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for the people coming in to ask
Yeah.
questions
Thanks,
and
guys.
to leave comments. Thank you so much.
All right.